Greetings and welcome to the second episode of the second season of the Moving Camp podcast that's put on by the United Supreme Council, Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Prince Hall affiliated, no other jurisdiction, United States of America Incorporated. So I'm really excited. I'm here as your humble host, Sublime Prince Stephen Baird, and we got a good one for you. On the last one, we talked about our physical health, but what's one thing that impacts our physical health and our stress is our financial health. Right. So we thought it was very much apropos and something that we need to look at to talk about like getting the ball rolling on understanding our finances. So what did we do? We went out and got the legend himself. We got somebody that's going to know a lot and it's going to be able to help us and drive us in the right direction. I'm going to have the distinct pleasure to introduce to everyone Sovereign Grand Inspector General Wayne E. Phillips out of Wolverine Consistory number 6, out of the Valley of Detroit, out of the Orient of Michigan. And we're going to have a fantastic time here today here for us. So we're going to go through a couple things together and we're going to go and answer some questions that everyone might have, introduce some things going on. But without further ado, Sovereign Grand Inspector General Phillips, indeed, it's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for joining us here this evening. But I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more in depth, and then we're just going to jump right into it so we can help the people
Hey,
out.
well, I thank you for having me on the show. And I had to, I looked around. Well, who else is on? He's talking about the legendary. I'm like, wait a minute, who am I on the lineup with? But no, I thank you for having me, and I think it's an honor, pleasure, and a privilege to be here and talk to the order about improving their financial health.
Yeah, so what I have instead is we're just gonna have the conversation like we do all the time, right? Just have a laid back conversation. Hopefully people can glean something from this. And so I'm gonna just jump right into it because I know these are some questions that a lot of people have is what is like I would say like the basics or foundation of kind of what would get the ball rolling for if somebody's looking to improve their finances, right? I think the first question that comes to mind is like, what's an annuity? Like I hear about this all the time. Like, kind of what is that, and kind of walk us through some of the one-on-one stuff to get the ball rolling.
I mean, the first thing that needs to be done is commitment. They've got to make the
Mm,
commitment to say, hey, I want to make a difference. I want to be the change within myself. And once that commitment starts, then the first thing you have to do is start to save,
mm,
because you can't build a portfolio. You can't talk about annuities, mutual funds, or any other type of investment if you have nothing to invest
mm.
into those things. So the first thing you have to do is be able to save. And to do that, I think the first thing that most people need to do is pay yourselves first.
Mm.
So when you get paid, instead of paying the bills first, because we've all heard the proverbial robbing Peter to pay Paul, we figure out how to get the bills paid. We figure out how to get things done. We need to figure out how to pay ourselves before we pay anybody else so that we can really build wealth within ourselves.
So that's actually interesting you brought up. That was something that somebody taught me at my job is basically you cipher off of either a percentage or a certain dollar amount of your paycheck goes into an account. Me, I need a little bit of discipline, so I made an account that I don't have access to a debit card with. That's just me, right? But kind of helps out. And what would be some questions if somebody was looking to figure out how to start siphoning off or like what to siphon off? Like, what are some questions they should ask about their finances or things they should look at to say, oh, let me save $5, $10, $50, $100? Like, kind of what are some of those things that they should be looking into to make a good decision to get the ball rolling like that?
Well, the I'm gonna take it back even a step further, because typically when you're saving for a reason.
Mm,
What is that reason? First let's identify what you're saving for and why you're saving. So one of the things and exercise that I like for people to do is to grab a blank sheet of paper and just draw a picture. Draw a picture of what financial independence means to you. Draw a picture of what it is you're saving for, whether it's a boat, whether it's college education for your children, whether it's retirement on a island that you own, whatever it may be, just draw that picture. So now you have that visual because I recognize that most of us are visual learners.
mm,
And, once we have that picture in front of us, we say, we have a goal and an objective to strive for. So now that we have that, then you figure out, you pay yourself first. That's the second step. So first is to identify what the goal and objective is. And, you don't want to say, most people I run into and they say, what are you saving for? They say, well, I just want more money. For what? What do you want to do with it? Do you want to travel? Do you want, to give back to charities? What do you want to do with the money that you have? Typically, it's purposeful.
Mm,
Most people just want to do something with it instead of just looking at it. There are a few sex out there that just like to jump into gold and swim in it, but typically, there are things and objectives that money's a means to an end.
mm.
So once we recognize that, then we figure out how to use it appropriately.
Okay. And trust me, hey, if anybody is swimming in their stuff and they want to allow me to jump in with them, that's not I won't turn that down by any means, right? And you brought up something that I was thinking about too as well is our audience is a wide range of individuals, all the way from like the mid 20s to like our 70s or 80s, right? So my question is as there's different demographics, they're in different places of their life, like kind of what was some of your like kind of starting points for like different demographics, right? Different age groups or so, of what they should look at to get this ball rolling.
Um, that's a tough question,
Okay.
because I've been doing this almost 29 years now, and even though demographically people may be categorized differently, starting points are a lot different. Because
Mhm.
as the saying goes, life be lifing, so to speak, and life goes on, and so there's different things like number of children that someone may have that
Mhm.
life happens in terms of the work world, and so although someone may be at an age where you say, okay, 50-year-old should be here and have this amount of money saved, and
Mhm.
maybe life prevented that from happening. So I don't want to paint a blanket picture that demographically this is where you should be at based on the age demographic. But the biggest thing, as I mentioned, is to get started and just be committed to whatever the goal and objective is. And it may take a little more if you're older. Like for example, if you're, I'll pick on my daughter, my youngest daughter. I can't give client information, but I can pick on her. She just graduated from college last year, and she wanted to come home to take a job so that she could save more money. I said, well, of course, let's let you come on home so you can save more money. But as you're saving money, one of the things that I want you to do, since you have no bills at the home at the house, is to max out your 401k.
Mhm.
Now she just turned 23 in May, and she just completed her first year at the job uh, this month, but she's maxing out 20 some $1,000 in her 401k as a 22, 23-year old. Now, her situation is different than a lot of other people's.
Mhm.
She has no bills, and gets to live rent free. So and for that demographic, for example, save as much as you possibly can for when life starts happening to you, when you have bills and expenses and you don't have as much to save. And then you
Mhm.
just take it over to, you always want to figure out how to save as much as possible, because ultimately cash flow determines how much you can save, and that determines your net worth, which
Mhm.
determines if you're going to reach your financial independence or not.
And I want to take a segue for the individuals that are watching that. So if you have a child or grandchildren, like show them this part of this podcast too as well, and like let them know, right? Like this is how we break these cycles and these generational issues is because now we have the information, right? So we can't say we don't know anymore, right? Because we SGIG Phillips is giving it to us. So that's something, like I said, even talking to my wife and my kids, because they're 11, 8, and 6, right? So it's like, what is their plans? Is there some way we can subsidize them so they can get a faster start, right? So sometimes that's the case, and that's kind of what we're pushing for. Now, let's say let's use me for example, because like I said, we can use an example, right? I'm 30, I'm gonna be 37 later on this in August, right? 37, three kids. They're younger age. I was thinking about some things, right? Like, what are some questions or something I should ask like a financial advisor on protecting like my assets that I have with them, or maybe something more generic of like, what are some things I should look at when it comes to like wills and stuff of that nature? Because that can, I know that's a way that we lose a lot of wealth, unfortunately, with the transfer to
Yeah.
another generation,
Um, there's so much to unpack in that question. I mean,
I try to use me to make it
Yeah.
easier, right? So we don't have
There-
a
there-
problem
there-
there.
there- there- there's so much to unpack in that. I mean, the first thing let me start with beginning to create intergenerational wealth. We have to do a much better job at educating our younger folk in terms of investment strategies and being able to save and just the importance of it. Um, I didn't grow up in a house where we talked about stocks or mutual funds or annuities or any investments or anything like that. I grew up in an era to where the well-to-do folks had their house paid for, and the car was paid for, and you were considered successful with about $2,500 in the bank. House
Mm,
paid for, car paid for, 2,500. You were ultra successful. Didn't know anything about investments and what have you. But we also have to do a better job in not putting our young folks out at 18 and say, okay, now
mm,
that you're 18, you're on your own. I got mine. You have to go get yours. When we look at a lot of other communities, they embrace the intergenerational living and
mm,
making sure that once that youngster goes out on their own, they're properly prepared. They have enough money for a down payment, if not to purchase their first home. They have enough money so that they aren't going out living check to check. And when you live in check to check, it makes it hard to save and end up making yourself last. And that's why we keep the cycle going in our communities because the social economic differences are really so huge that we have to break those cycles.
mm,
And so it begins with making sure our children are better prepared. Now, as we teach our children to invest, um, I have a client and they started an investment for their 8-year-old son just last week. So we had a meeting with the 8-year-old and he was talking to his financial advisor. And, we talked about risk and we talked about stocks and ownership and just make sure he had, some awareness in that and understanding. But the thing that we also did, we purchased two stocks for him. We
mm,
purchased Nike, which he talked about his favorite gym shoes and his favorite gym shoes were Nike. So we talked about, ownership and how, he can support the Nike shares that he owns by purchasing that product. And
mm.
so we bought Nike and we also bought Roblox.
Oh,
You know, uh,
yeah.
Roblox, that's the biggest way for the kids. I know my granddaughter's always asked me, can she have a $20 for a Roblox card or something like that? And they love that. So we transferred that over into ownership. So now that he owns some shares of Roblox and how that, so now and now he's excited about what he wants to own next. He wants to own
Mm,
Frito-Lay and Doritos next. So he knows that he looking to buy Pepsi. So he's looking to buy the things that he supports and what he's used to. And I think that's the biggest way to get children involved, so that they understand and recognize what ownership means.
mm. And I that made me think of the quote. I'm not sure where I heard it from. They said the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is right now. So that kind of what tells me, it's like, hey, you wish you could have said, hey, I bought Apple 20 years ago. Right now is that 20 years ago, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's something I could think about too. I could have a conversation because my son plays Roblox. He loves. Got my daughter got passed down some Beats by Dre headphones, and now she loves them things, right? Because it was my mother's, right? So it's like, hey, you see these
Mm-hmm.
things, and it's tangible for them. So hopefully our viewers, as you're watching this, right, and you're thinking about it, it's like this is how you get people involved and they kind of care about it. So thank you for that, for
You
real.
have
So
to. And you
yeah.
mentioned something just now. You said it was passed down from your mother.
Hmm.
You know, intergenerational wealth. We've got to do a better job. How you mentioned before in terms of wills and estate planning and trust and those things. Um, Only 5% of the American population, based on latest statistics, have their wills and trusts properly in place right now.
Mm,
And in the African American community, those numbers are even less.
mm,
So when we look at passing down wealth or just creating intergenerational wealth, it's hard to do so when you don't have a will or trust established. It's
Mm,
hard to do so when you don't have beneficiaries designated on your accounts. It makes it very extremely difficult to create intergenerational wealth when it's being absorbed by probate costs. Because we're in probate, because what do we do with the house? What do we do with this or that? And the attorneys and the judges and court costs are eating up whatever estate that may have been left to our children's or our loved ones. And I'll move that sustainability even more so with the United Supreme Council. One of the things that our Sovereign Grand Commander wants us to do is to be able to create a sustainable order. So two things we have to do. First, we've got to create membership that can sustain themselves. And the other thing with that, we have to remember to our different organizations like the American Cancer Society. I mean, they raise millions based upon monies that's left over in wills and trusts from people that care about their vision and what they're doing. And we have a lot of members that spend so much time and energy and using their talents. And, we go to session every year and, we love to see each other, but we very rarely remember our order when it comes time to put our states and our trust and wills together.
mm.
And so we've got to do a better job at that as well.
Oh, that's something too. I think people should reach out and look at because we're in some other organizations, right? And we see, I know, especially in one of our Greek led organizations, I feel like that's least having a conversation. And this one, there's physical, actual programs that you can easily leave things to, right? So me and my wife
Mhm.
had that conversation to take a look at it. Like, hey, like if we really want to support like scholarship or certain kind of programming, you can designate a portion of you know what I mean, your will say, hey, they're gonna get like 10 grand, right? That's what some of our counterparts do, right? I
That's
know a
what a lot of
lot
our
of
counterparts do.
I go to the meeting, I ask, like, hey, where did this come from? They're like, hey, this was somebody literally 40 years ago, passed away, left us, and then we were just good stewards of the money from there. Um, so again, that's something interesting. I think down the road we dive in a little bit deeper. Maybe that's a topic at one of you United Supreme Council education forums that you put on. So give you something down the road. And
It's definitely on the horizon.
because I have to do say, like, and for the people who are watching, we're going in and we're having this dialogue, right? You're seeing us have this conversation, but you should come to United Supreme Council and then come to the sessions that SGIG Phillips and his team puts on because it's more conversational too, where you have the opportunity to ask some questions. So it helps out a little bit more too as well. So one of the added benefits of attending United Supreme Council, And a quick segue, because we talked about something too that I think affects us passing on generational wealth is healthcare when we get a little bit older, right? Is there
Absolutely.
is there some general like questions or thought process that our members who are a little bit, let's say seasoned and more wisdom fulfilled, that should start asking questions on or looking at?
Um, the one thing that anyone who well, first let me go back a little bit. I recommend if you do not have one that you get a fully comprehensive financial analysis to help you determine how to avoid rodents. As part of that plan, it will incorporate retirement savings and healthcare. Futuristic costs will also be projected in that as well, because healthcare is just astronomical and is one of the biggest deterrents of a comfortable retirement that most of our retirees face. Whether it's prescription costs or just medical expenses or what have you. So make sure that that's built into your financial analysis, and also make sure that you have a higher than normal inflationary amount projection for that. Whereas if inflation is going up at an average of 2.5 to 3% a year, you might want to use a 7.5 to 10% number,
Mm,
inflationary number for healthcare costs.
mm,
To make sure that you're still in alignment to be able to not run out of funds. I mean, because as much as Medicaid is a great benefit, I don't
mm.
think we want to see any of our constituents have to reach Medicaid status in order to have proper health care. coverage, because you're not allowed to have a lot of assets for Medicaid to
Mm,
step in.
mm. So that kind of walks me through because we talked about a little bit on the previous podcast. We're talking about the health and how you have to find things up a little bit earlier, and then coming now into this, the proper planning to be able to help us make sure that we are sustainable. Right? It's I think this is the same
Right.
type of conversation is sustainability, right? And what that looks like because your living expenses might be different than the next person next to you too as well. So I think it's important, like you're saying, to consult a financial advisor, right? And get you, like you said, I think you said a comprehensive financial analysis of where you need to be is what people
Right,
need to
right,
look at. Yeah.
right. A
Now,
comprehensive analysis will look at your cash flow, to look at your minimizing taxes for you, to look at investment planning, retirement planning, estate planning,
mm,
and just look at all those areas collectively instead of looking at them individually,
mm,
because they all work hand in hand for your financial independence.
okay. Now, last set of question that I have here for you is let's say like we had a member right now, they're watching this podcast, they're excited and they want to take action, right? The first thing they were talking about is just figuring out the like your savings, right? And kind of going through that. And you're probably like you need to look at your budget, see how much you got coming in versus coming out, right? Figure that out. My question
Cash
is
flow
that
king.
once they figure that out and they say, "Hey, I'm ready to take the next steps," what would be some advice that you would tell them about soliciting financial advice or where to not where to go? Let me not ask it like that, but like what things to look for or what questions to ask or things of this nature. I want to give them some ammunition for those who might be ready right now or might be ready in the future to kind of do a little bit more investing or more savings.
You want to make sure that you're with an licensed financial advisor, not somebody who's just using the title loosely, but somebody who is licensed and accredited. There are many designations from um, CFP to MPAS to just different designations that will show what those areas of expertise are for that individual. A lot of us are familiar with the CFP, Certified Financial Planner.
Mhm.
The MPAS is something that's even a little bit more um, rare in terms of someone with a master's degree in financial
Mhm.
planning.
Mhm.
So there's lots of different levels to accreditation, but you want to make sure that whoever you're talking with is somebody that is fully licensed and has the credentials to back up the advice that they're giving you.
Okay. Is there any questions you think they should ask getting the ball rolling, right? I keep bringing the comprehensive financial analysis, like that's keep popping up in my head, like, hey, that seems like something that like me and my wife need to sit down and kind of look through, right? But is there anything like that that you might think people would find valuable?
They should ask, does the financial advisor or financial planner specialize in putting together fully comprehensive financial plans?
Mm,
Some do not. Some are transactional. Some advisors are transactional where it's say, okay, well, we're going to look at this specific um, area, like say college planning for your children, and they
mhm,
might say we're just going to focus on 529 plans for you. Not looking at how that's affecting the tax situation, or looking at different states where it might have tax benefits to different 529 plans versus just what's offered in your home state. So
mm,
looking around the country and seeing what's out there could be a benefit, but they might just look completely at that and just focus on the transaction versus a stockbroker might look at just investing into a stock and just doing that transaction. But you want something that's going to be fully comprehensive because all the areas are integrated with one another.
mm,
So that's an important piece there. The other thing is you want to sit down and just talk to them because over time, your financial advisor may know a lot more about you than your closest family members,
mm,
because you need to open up. One of the things that I think stops us from, and by us, I mean our community, from seeking out help is we don't like to open up.
mm,
We've got to, present this image. Where armor is impenetrable, and we don't have any weaknesses. Versus if I come and I open up my financial situation to you, there may be a weak spot here or there. Nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed of, but that's why I'm coming to see. That's why I seek help. Same way in terms of, you know, um, therapy in the Black community is was frowned upon for many years, and
Mhm.
getting assistance and help. It's okay to get assistance and help. It's okay to need help. It's okay to seek it out, and we've got to be okay with recognizing that and saying it's the best way to improve our situation and ourselves is to get with those who can help us improve our situation and ourselves.
Mm. No, so those are heavy words, and I think people, hopefully, when they get to this portion, understand that our goal here, especially I say seeing your work and speaking with you, is you truly want to impact people's lives, right? Like this can actually change. If you are financially stable, the way that you live and carry your life is going to be a lot different than somebody who's going through a little bit of scarcity, right? So I believe this is a very important topic that we went through. I know there's probably a plethora of questions that our audience wants us to ask, but due to certain time constraints and other things, we can't dive into everything. The goal is just to get you guys active, right? So as you see this podcast, we need to get you off your butt and start moving and just take some kind of action. And my personal opinion, because I'm in mortgages, right? I tell my people like, hey, it's celebrate the wins, right? Even if it's a small win, you need to celebrate that win
Absolutely.
and keep that momentum going. You know what I mean? That's going to be a lot for you. And I want to just last quick thing that I'm just going to double check. I'm gonna ask you, and this is going to be the most important question of all. Are you a U
Oh,
of
okay.
M? Are you a U of M or Michigan State fan?
See, I'm going to answer that question, but I think we need to really look at most importantly than that is, you know, um, I'm a Rattler fan
Okay, okay.
above else, and our HBCUs, uh, Rattler strike. But if it comes down to it, in terms of U of M versus Sparty, I think that's what they call them, the guy in a little dress up in Lansing. So I guess that kind of tells you where I'm at. No, I've always been a U of M fan growing up. Back to the days of watching the teams that both Schemblecker had
Yeah,
out there, and so I've always been a U of M fan, 5-5, and you know, um,
good choice. Good choice.
so
I get in
but
trouble depending on where my meeting is that month. I get in trouble if I'm in Lansing. I gotta be careful. I don't come back, right? You know what I mean? So, but
hey, that school down in Tallahassee on the highest of Seven Hills, Florida University, that's a terrific school. I
that
tell you,
I I've
Rattler
heard
strike and strike again.
I know a couple of y'all from down there. I'm pretty sure. Like I'm gonna hear this later. I have to bring that up, but I want people to realize is that we're all human, and when they come around, they interact, right? Like hopefully, I'm not speaking out of turn when I say that. Like, hey, if people reach out, ask questions, like that's why we have these like forums, especially like at United Supreme Council. Like you have to really make sure you attend these things, right? Because the United Supreme Council is making sure to provide the material that's needed for you right now. And I'm gonna tell you right now, with the economic status of where we're at in America, we need this type of advice and understanding to protect ourselves. And so, once again, we're wrapping up this podcast here for our second episode. This was very impactful, and hopefully, you were motivated by what you've heard from Sovereign Grand Inspector General Wayne E. Phillips. Until the next time, we want to thank you so much. Make sure you like and subscribe our podcast and share it with your friends and family. Till next month.